if you don't know me, welcome to my channel. This video is about a podcast that I watched in one of my classes, and that podcast is called The Video Palace. I really enjoyed this podcast. It was a great mystery podcast, I feel like. I loved it. It was very entertaining. One of my favorite episodes was episode 6, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But, I really enjoyed it. I feel like, as someone who really enjoys mystery shows and stuff like that, this was something that filled that void for me for a little bit, because I feel like it filled that void because it's hard to, find those types of shows often. You can't ever really find a good mystery show, I feel like. It's kind of hard to do. Not done right, or, the story just doesn't make sense. But I felt like for a little bit, when I was first starting to watch The Video Palace, that was a thing that filled that void for me for a little bit. But, we get to the but. There was a lot of things I didn't like about the last episode. A lot. And I'm not gonna lie, I didn't like the last episode. And some of the episodes leading up to the last episode were a little weird. But the weirdest episode was episode 10. Last episode. Did not like that one at all. And I'm going to be reviewing that episode. So, if you have not watched The Video Palace, I would go watch The Video Palace first, because I'm going to be referencing a lot of certain episodes, especially episode 6, because that's my favorite one. And I'll be explaining why that's my favorite one. And if you're someone who has watched The Video Palace or listened to it, this is all my personal opinion. I'm going to be giving reasons on why I think it's not good. But with further ado, let's get into why I do not like episode 10 and why I like episode 6. So let's start with the bad news. Let's start with why I don't like episode 10. I did not like how the ending did not answer a lot of my questions. I feel like the show did a really good job at bringing questions up and then not answering them. Eyeless Man. Where did he come from? I know in a certain episode that he was important, he got added up, which I'll play that clip right now.
Oh, my dad told me the Eyeless Man shut it down.
But still, how was that important? That came out of nowhere. There was no mention of him before until we talked to those teenagers. Why was he a big part of episode 10? And I get that they answered one question about Thurman Mueller, but I have so many more questions about him now. Why? Why did he even get into the Video Palace in the first place? I get it, he likes videos. But why would he want to help with the white tapes? Why did he send more white tapes away if they need the white tapes? What's the point of the white tapes? Because that's what the show was about. That's what the series was about, the white tapes. And we never figured that out. The whole point of the series was to talk about the white tapes and answer why were they needed and what were they, where did they come from. We figured out they came from the Video Palace, right? We found out who was sending them. Why were they sending them? To get people to join this cult? What was the cult about? What was the 8 doors? There are so many things that they brought up but never answer. And when they answer questions at the end, about Thurman, they just ask you more questions. I felt like they were setting up for a second season. Which is fine. You can set up for a second season. But there's a point where you don't get a second season. All your answers are all the questions you have are unanswered. I know there's a book out there. I just want to say, even though I mentioned the book, I have not read it, so I might get some things wrong about the book. If that's the case, sorry. But it's about the Eyeless Man, not about Mark. Something I had like a really weird thought about. Mark goes missing at episode 10. Who uploaded the episode? Tamra. You know what she thinks while her boyfriend's missing? To sell her stuff to Shudder, which you may say, well, wait. Why would you say that? Well, first of all, Shudder was mentioned in the first podcast by a Shudder employee that they would buy it out. Or the podcast would be bought out by Shudder as like a thing.
I hope you would keep me abreast of the journey because, I really want to follow this. And, I might be so bold as to suggest that Shudder might as well. So you're going to have to let me know how this is going.
Now all of a sudden this is uploaded. Tamra's finishing up your boyfriend's gone missing and you're finishing up the podcast. Do you think it's going to bring him back? No, he's gone. The podcast was the reason why he went insane. Is those videotapes. Also, is this group of people just men? I was thinking this. Like, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but during the whole thing, they were, talking. Mark was interviewing all these people, but all the women that he interviewed were either spouses or women who tried to get involved, but didn't, or they die or something, or they get really injured because they try to help Mark. Like Kat got into a car crash.
We have breaking news right now. The Cross Bronx has been shut down due to a 6-car pileup. Emergency crews are on that scene. Several injuries reported, including a victim that had to be airlifted to Mercy General. Alex Lee is on the scene right now with a live follow-up.
Kat doesn't take that route to go home, does she?
I don't... Oh my god, Kat.
I made some calls and learned that Kat was in that accident.
Amber, she didn't even... She, went into the basement like Mark did. Exact same basement. You know what they did? They sent her back. You know what they did to Mark? They took him over with whatever happened.
The door, and there was this light, and it wasn't a light in the closet. It was behind the closet, glowing through the wall. Pushed on the wall, and it swung open like a door. Steps going down into her basement. Instantly started to feel sick. Just felt like the room go small. You know that feeling when you're gonna pass out? The next day, I wake up in my apartment. I have no idea how I got there. And there's this tiny cassette in my pocket.
That was Amber's clip, and this is Mark's clip.
Listen, Andy, you can't just go. You have to be clean.
I don't want to go.
Yeah, you do. Come on, man, that's why you're clean.
And, Tamra was getting really into the white tapes. She was getting really into it. They could have taken Tamra at some point, too, but they chose not to. They could have taken Thurman Mueller's wife. Chose not to. The show is about obsessions, so why don't they take the woman with obsessions? And, it just makes no sense. I get why maybe not, Thurman's spouse. Tamra was also kind of obsessed with the white tapes, if you think about it, because no matter how much she told Mark to stop, she always wanted to go back. Those are some questions that don't have to be answered. The main questions that actually should, that I asked in the beginning, is why was the eyeless man there? Why the 8 doors? The show didn't start as mystical or anything. I thought this was gonna happen until it happened. I first watched the episode about the eyeless man. I thought, oh, they're probably just throwing a curveball in there. There's no way that it's involved in the story at all. Answering questions about him, I'm it's probably not involved. I thought it would make no sense. And I thought, well, maybe Thurman's the eyeless man. So what is the eyeless man? Why are these white tapes sent to people and brainwashing them? Why was Mark needed? Did Mark see? It's so weird how it ended. There is no way that they were thinking that they're going to only end on season 1. Because it feels rushed. It feels like a rushed ending. Because a lot of the stuff leading up to this, to get to this ending, felt rushed too. Adding the eyeless man. Episode 6 was the only one that I feel like wasn't really rushed. It was pretty good put together. Sometimes a story could be hard to follow because, one, it's a podcast, so it's harder to tell a story, which is understandable. They're doing a new format. When doing a podcast, you have to be very descriptive. Sometimes if you're not descriptive enough, that leaves the viewers wondering what's going on. There was many times when I'd watch the podcast and I would not know what's going on, so I'd have to rewatch. I've watched the podcast 2-3 times, some episodes, and only got it the third or second time.
I just want to note that while I'm clipping episodes for you guys, sometimes I'm learning stuff that I didn't know after watching the episodes 2 to 3 times.
Episode 10 is full of it. One example is us not knowing what happened to actual Mark. Like, he just screams. Why I'm so annoyed with the ending is because it leaves so much mystery that is unsolved. I am someone who loves solving mysteries. It gives you closure. Now I feel like I have no closure for this show. This one really got me. Like, I don't know. Like, especially when they started actually answering stuff, then they throw it all away. And like I said, I get it's a mystery. But the point in mystery stories, in my opinion, is to answer the questions that you're making a mystery about. I thought it wasn't going to be a bad ending. And I really enjoyed the episodes before episode 10. Like, I really enjoyed all the episodes. But one in particular is episode 6. Because episode 6 started answering those questions that I had. Started making more sense. Started to put the puzzles pieces together. Started to add cool and wacky stuff to the story. Like Thurman knowing Mark when he was younger. So cool. Tamara working with him. So cool. Like, everyone was working together. Even though there was some issues, it was like harmony. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. Some main points I enjoyed about episode 6 was Mark interviewing Amber. Like, sometimes when they're interviewing, when she was getting interviewed and it cut to Tamara's, I was like, oh, that sucks. And then they would do the same thing with Tamara. Like, I was really into her interview, and then ends, goes to Mark. Oh, that sucks. I really want to go back to them. And then I remember that, oh, this was going on with Amber. Never mind, I want to watch Amber's. Oh, wait, no, I want to continue Amber's. And then it goes back to Tamara. Like, they did such a good job with that. Like, I wish the whole thing was just that, like, type of interview style, because that was such a good way of keeping the audience captivated, keeping them hooked on the story. Like, to me, that was such a good way of keeping me focused on the story, because I was actually listening to that episode. Like, I remember so much from that. I love that how they had to work together to come to an ending for that episode. Because if they both didn't have each other, they wouldn't come with the evidence that they found. And episode 10 had some great stuff in it too, because they made callbacks to episode 6.
I already put Amber's clip in before, so I'm just going to play Mark's clip. So here it is.
Light coming out of the closet. Just got it.
Mark, what are you doing? What are you doing?
If there's some light, I think there's a false wall here. Okay, there's steps going down.
Mark.
Of Amber being interviewed, and then Mark going into the basement, that is a callback to episode 6. I love that. That whole basement scene is basically a callback to Amber's interview, and it's great. I like that they connected that into episode 10. Really enjoyed how Randy was part of the whole thing in episode 10. Really like that we did find Thurman in the end, just dead. And another thing I really liked, because when I was doing some more research for this, like on reviews and stuff about the actual thing that I want to add in a second, I did find what the character, like the people voice acting the characters look like. And oh my god, they look exactly how they sound. Like, I was imagining them, I looked at their pictures, almost all of them immediately recognized.
So I'm not gonna lie, I was really tired when I was recording this, so my transition for this part was not good at all. So let's now get into the review part of this video. Here I'll go through some reviews that I found, but I just picked some like ones that I thought were similar to what I was thinking, or some that show that there are people who like the ending. Here's one by Empress Surkay. That being said, it isn't super scary or anything, while at times the plot almost seemed to be too convoluted. I felt lost at times, which could be very frustrating. Overall, though, a very fun story. Like I said, the story sometimes is very hard to follow. I completely agree with Empress on this. This one is by Jalika NC. It's a hater, but it left me thinking about for months after, probably forever. Completely agree. Like, the ending may be a little annoying, but the ending did a good job at keeping people to remember the show. Some shows don't do that. This one is by Grouch20. What is the issue with all these mystery podcasts that don't really end? Narratives need endings, especially mysteries. If it's deliberately open-ended for a second season, I definitely won't want to listen because it'll be just as disappointing. Be creative enough to make your second season a whole new story after a satisfying ending to the first take. So I'm re-recording about what I said about this person's review because I completely agree with their review, and for some reason I was acting like I didn't, even though this whole thing has been about why I don't like the ending. So yeah, I just wanted to put that. I do like it. I completely agree with it, and me and them completely align on this. This one is by Anzies. I did, and I'm very pleased with my decision. This podcast created intense curiosity. It left me sad at the end, though. I wish I could talk more in detail about it, but you'll just have to see for yourself. I highly recommend that you do. Again, another complaint about the ending. Also, I have to mention a lot of these people either gave them 3 out of 5 or 5 out of 5. I think only one person gave them a 3 out of 5 for the podcast, so they're still rating them well. They still enjoy the podcast. They just didn't like how it ended, which is fair. By Cag Mega. I really enjoyed Video Palace. It was fun to listen to, well acted, well written. Unfortunately, the ending was very disappointing. This kind of shows screams for reveals, and we basically get none. Was it an extra dimensional entity like Cthulhu? Was it the devil? Time travel gone away? Aliens? Nobody knows, and that sucked. Completely agree. And, you know, I want to add, there's a lot of good reviews, and this person still gave 5 out of 5. They didn't even get a 1 out of 5. They gave 5 out of 5. I got all these reviews from podparis.com. It'll be in the description. And as well as they still have an IMDb rating of 8.5 with people thinking this. So just because people don't like the ending doesn't mean it's not a good show. I still suggest watching it. I like episode 10, but I like it to an extent. Like, I don't think it destroys the whole show. I still think you should watch it. But that's all I really have to say, guys, about it. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I would like to remind you all to please be kind and rewind.